Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and Louis D'Souza here on this Monday, October the 22nd, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time in New York. Your first daily dose of happy for the day, and we hope that your day is off to a happy start, or if you're in the middle of your day, we hope your day is in the middle of a good start. But whichever way it is, we hope that you're doing having a great time and enjoying a Monday, because that's the best way to do a Monday, is to enjoy them. And Louis is back to talk to us about some healing stories he's been telling. Louis, how you doing? We haven't talked in a week, but how's it going?
Very good, thanks, Walt. Very good. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. We had an interesting session yesterday. We had a three-way session with Anne-Marie and new co-host Mark Evans, and it was a lot of fun. Mark is a very funny guy. It was rollicking. I mean, the whole show was rolling. So, yeah.
Fantastic. I haven't listened to that one yet.
I'm kind of on a high from it. It was really, really fun. So hopefully we continue the high today. That would be a really ideal thing from my perspective and from our listeners' perspective, I suspect.
Yeah, why not? If not, why not?
Absolutely. So, and before we get going, I want to make sure I get our promo messages in. If you're not yet subscribing to the podcast, we urge you to do so, because you get 11 episodes a week coming right to your smartphone every single week for you to play whenever you want or need to get that daily dose of happy. And it's really easy to do. It's free. There's no charge involved. Most people know how to subscribe these days, but for those who aren't quite sure how, we have instructions written out on our website at loatoday.net. And it just follows those instructions. They're really simple. And you click on a link and follow your nose after that. It's pretty straightforward. And then you'll be getting all the episodes coming right to your smartphone. And then for all of our people who are both either new subscribers or existing subscribers or long-termers, we also keep asking you, and we want you to keep doing it, please post about loatoday.net on your favorite social media channels, because in the 3+ months that we've been doing that, we have doubled our listenership, and we want to keep accelerating that pace. In fact, Louis, over the weekend, not only did we have a great session, but it was a live stream session that we did on Sunday night to the Facebook group called Law of Attraction Changed My Life, which has nearly 90,000 members in it. And we didn't reach all 90,000, of course, because the group was founded in your neck of the woods. It was founded in London. And the hour that we did it was about 1 a.m., so we weren't going to get a whole lot of listeners from London at that time. But nevertheless, we had people show up, and they were giving us thumbs up, and they were liking it. And so that's the beginning of what I hope is going to be a really good thing. We're going to do a lot of live streams to that group and to some other larger groups, too, on Facebook. And I'm just getting excited how many people we're reaching. But we do still want our listeners to keep posting to their own social media about it, because we just want more and more and more and more people to get their daily doses of happy. And I just keep imagining what happens when we have, hundreds of thousands, millions of people getting their daily doses every single day. This whole planet just gets so much better when I think about that.
I'm just excited for you, Walt.
Well, thank you. I'm excited too. But seriously, that's one of the things that motivates me. I just love the idea of doing something that I love so much and having so many people positively impacted by it. That just gives me chills going up and down my spine. I get all excited. So,
well, that sounds very in the vortex.
It does, very in the vortex. And that's where we're going to spend time today, in the vortex, continuing the discussion we had last week about healing, where you had some really remarkable stories to share with us. And you even gave me a few hints that I'm not going to reveal just yet about what may be coming in the next couple of weeks. But so anyway, where are we today? What path do you want to go on today along this topic of healing and using the power of our mind to do so?
Well, Walt, I'm a very firm believer in stories.
You and me both.
And I have an incredible story that I want to share.
Okay.
Now, it's not all in the vortex, and it's not all happy.
No, good stories often start outside the vortex. I mean, I like them when they end up in the vortex, but they often start sometimes way outside the vortex, so that's okay.
So I'm gonna just paint a bit of a time frame. Those listeners who have been listening, consistently to me and know the last story I spoke. The last story happened more recently, and this one happened quite a lot before that. So I just wanted to give people a time frame of these two stories. Mm-hmm. Now, the last story, I was talking very confidently about how I dealt with a health issue. Now I'm going to tell you about an operation I had that took me in completely the other direction. It brought me to experience what I would consider the greatest humility I've ever experienced in my life.
Oh, my.
It brought me to my knees, physically, emotionally, mentally as well. But it talks to a lot of the law of attraction principles and things. So it talks to, in the vortex, it talks to manifestation, it talks to timing and alignment. So it's a story which I've really wanted to talk about, and I'm, quite keen to spread it out as long as I need to, so that I get the full story, going. It might take the full hour. It might take less than that. I'm really unsure.
No, that's right. We'll go with it.
I'll start at the beginning. It took about a year for this whole thing to begin and end.
Okay.
So, first of all, I was doing up some properties that I own in Scotland. Now, what happened was I went up to Scotland, bought the properties, and I sorted out with a friend of mine to his the friend of mine's husband was a decorator, and I asked him to go into the houses that I purchased and just do them up for me. I paid him up front because, I really enjoyed my friend, and I've got a good relationship with her. And, obviously I trusted her husband, and, I'd gone up and stayed with them and I knew them, but, he reneged on it, and he didn't do all the work.
Oh.
So I was left with no money, which, the money I'd set aside to do the job was now gone.
Right.
Properties that were half done, and a really sticky situation for me. So I packed up all my tools in the car, went up to Scotland where the properties are, and sat in the properties, and I started phoning around to get different workmen to come help me. And I did some of the work myself. I got them to help me, and I built up a power team there. It was very stressful because I was trying to deal with my friend, trying to get money out of them. He had left his tools in one of my properties, and I didn't want to give him his tools back until he paid, until he did what he said.
Right.
And my friend said, I'm supporting my husband, and I don't want to talk about it with you anymore. And so she cut me off. So the whole thing was incredibly traumatic.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was having quite a traumatic experience with my sister as well. And so I had two, what I would call ruptured relationships. Well, it's the word I used, those words I use is because of Louise Hay's book. Okay. And,
right.
What happened to me is soon after that, I landed up with a hernia.
Oh, boy.
So it was the low hernia, it wasn't the hiatus one. So it wasn't the worst one. And of course, I was wondering, where does this come from? Where does this come from? It was like straight out of the blue. I wasn't lifting anything. I wasn't doing anything. So I had the nudge, go to Louise Hay's book and have a look inside there and, just check out what hernia is about.
Right.
So one of the things about hernia is ruptured relationships.
Ah.
Okay. And I just had two of them. So I decided to go to my local doctor. Sorry, just going to have a quick drink.
No problem. Given that story, I'd want to have a quick drink too. Maybe a stiff one. Who knows?
Don't make me laugh.
I'm trying my best. Come on.
This is a serious story.
Yes, right. Sorry. I'll assume my serious face again. Serious.
So I will go to my local doctor, and my GP said, yeah, you got a hernia. You need to go have an operation. It's a 45-minute thing. Doesn't take, it's no problem. Let me get you through to the specialist. You can have a chat to him. So I go to the specialist, have a chat, talk about it, decide to have the operation. Now, I'm going in for my operation, and I'm lying on the operating table, and they put the drug to put you to sleep in. Can't think of the word now. So you know what it is. So just before I'm going to sleep, some part of myself says to another part of myself, I'm so sorry, physical body, to put you through this.
Wow.
And it was so deep and intense. It's like, what? Where's this coming from? I had never experienced anything like this before. And it was so genuine. It was the genuineness which actually shook me to my core. It's like, what part of me speaking to what part?
Right.
Speaking to my body, but where does this come from? But it was really, I've always had a huge respect for my body. As I've explained before, I was a sick kid. I had a lot of problems.
Sure.
And I've spent a lot of time looking after my body and getting healthy and getting confident and sorting out many, many, many challenges which I've had along the way. So I wake up and the operation's done, and I have a huge orange burn all around my where they shaved and where they put the cleaning liquid or fluid, whatever it is they use, the alcohol, whatever it is. I was obviously allergic to it because I came up with an incredible redness to it. It was
right.
a color you don't want to see. It's just terrible. So I go home and, just a couple of weeks and you'll recover and, stuff like that. So for about a week, I was just getting weaker and weaker and sicker and sicker and weaker. And literally I was crawling up and down the stairs. I couldn't even get onto the settee when I was downstairs to lie down. I just lay on the floor and I was very, very weak. My wife, who's a nurse, was wandering around, and helping me the best she can. But I got up and I decided to eventually have enough energy to get up and walk around. Now, the wound was starting to look a little bit pussy and infected. So I decided to go to a doctor, and the doctor looked at me and he said, no, we're going to have to give you some antibiotics for that. So he gave me penicillin, and of course I was allergic to penicillin, so my whole body reacted violently to that.
Oh, lovely.
So I was already incredibly weak. I was now having penicillin, which I was fighting. And I was even weaker than I was before, and I was wandering around outside just in a kind of a daze. And my neighbor, who's also a nurse, took one look at me and said, Louis, I don't know what's going on in your life, but I'm a nurse and you better go to hospital right now. So I wandered into the house, phoned my wife, and we went straight to hospital. And they put me in the emergency monitoring unit straight away. Literally there's a huge queue in the hospital. The nurse took one look at me and put me straight in a bed and gave me a doctor immediately.
Wow.
No hesitation whatsoever. It was straight in. And the doctor, realized that this was quite bad, put me in the monitoring thing, didn't really know what to do. I hadn't eaten for a long time. So I was in a mess, and the penicillin effect, what it had for me is I couldn't touch anything with my feet or my hands without incredible pain for every nerve center. So if I touched a glass, if I touched a table, if I got up and stood on the bed, I was in immense pain, like pins and needles going straight into me.
Wow.
And so I was lying there getting weaker and weaker. I was not able to do or use any of the techniques that I knew. Okay, I was just too weak. I wasn't able to take the nutrition I would normally be able to take. I wasn't able to breathe the way I would normally be able to. I wasn't able to use water the way I was able to. I wasn't able to use any of the techniques that I would have normally run to help me. I was just too weak to do anything. I wasn't even eating.
Yeah.
They really struggled to get anything into me. So they had a drip into me and all the rest of it.
Right.
So I am sitting there really suffering quite badly. And I slowly get my first meal in, and I go to the bathroom, which I must admit was very dirty and was not up to standard in any respect. There was a guy next to me who was dying, and he had water on his lungs, and So this is a place you go to heal, a hospital, yeah? And,
Yeah.
and you have these people dying around you, but the way he died was terrible because the night staff don't really look after the people that well. You know, most of the night staff, where I was there, I'm not speaking about everybody in general, there was a lack of care.
Wow.
You could feel it, okay? So this guy was breathing water. You know, there's obviously water on his lungs or something. And he's next to me gasping for every breath. And, you know, I even have to call him, come look at this guy. You know, something's really not right. You know, he's been doing this too long. So a young American doctor comes along and quickly sucks out some liquid out of his lungs. And it's just boom, 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 throw the machine, stick this thing down his throat, and then gone, and just leave him. And I was like, 2 minutes later, he's got again, and I was like, and he dies. Okay.
Oh,
so, other people have a lot of other issues around me, and some guy, defecated in his bed, and the smell in the whole ward it was horrendous. Okay.
yeah.
So I'm trying to heal and get back into my place, and I'm surrounded by all this. So it was really interesting experience. So the next day I'm slowly getting a little bit, I mean, tiny bit better. And I say to the nurse, I want to go for a walk. I want to go outside. Which way? How do I get out of here? So they look at me and they like kind of wink because we know they think I want to go smoke. You know, I've never smoked in my life.
Oh,
so they say, oh, you just go down the stair and you go out there. So I went out where they said, you know, and I'm like dressed up in my kind of like pajama thing, and I'm just standing there, and I walk out and there's a church right in front of me, and there's a church service, and it's Sunday, and a lady says, oh, do you want to come in? And not being a particularly religious person in that stage, said, no, thank you.
Okay.
But thanks for the chair. I will need it. Can I sit down? Can I sit down in this kind of like parky area here? And she said, yeah, just sit here. And, you know, I'm sitting there and I have this incredible experience where I'm taken back in time, and I was like, what do they call those guys? Knights Templar.
No kidding. Wow.
And I was kind of like, you know that witch story where, you know, if I catch you and I put you in water, if you stay afloat, you're a witch, and then I burn you. And then if you sink, then you weren't a witch, but, you know, you're dead in any case. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
So those are the kind of things I was doing.
Clearly not in your best mind.
So, I kind of said, okay, that's the past. What now? And they said, on the right-hand side is the religion and the church. On the left-hand side is nature. Okay.
All right.
You can choose which way and what you want to do. And I said, I definitely want to choose nature, and I definitely want to choose, a path that I'm going to follow, what I'm going to choose. And I said, how do I move forward? And I saw a little squirrel foraging all over the place. And I was told that you have studied health, you've studied the body, you know everything you need to do. Go and do it.
Okay.
And that was it. Poof. Back, sitting there completely shocked to my core.
Yeah.
And I went back to the hospital, and I started getting better from that instant onwards.
Wow.
Quickly.
Very good.
Quickly. Now, my wife came, visited me, and it was a day or two later or whatever. I can't quite remember the exact time frame. And I said to her one day when she was there, I said, they're going to move me. They're going to move me now. I knew it with an absolute, utter certainty. And no, it wasn't move me. I said, they're going to release me now.
Oh, wow.
And she said, no, I don't believe that at all. I don't think so. So they came to me and they said, no, we're going to move you to another ward. And I was totally confused because I knew I was going to be released. I had no doubt.
Okay.
I was completely 100% sure I was out of there. So they moved me to the other one, and then they got another doctor. He looked at me and he said, no, you can go if you want. I said, yes, that's what I was expecting.
Wow.
So I left. I went home. And for the next 5 days...
I have to interrupt, too. Was your wife surprised when you got home?
Well, she took me home. She
took you home. Okay, that makes more sense, yeah.
Yeah. She was very scared, I suppose I'd have to say that.
Okay.
When I looked in her eyes and I could see when she was looking at me, she was shocked about everything that was going on in my life.
Right. Well, who wouldn't be?
Yeah, when you explain all these experiences and all the rest of it, it's like, well, what is going on? Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
It was not easy for her. Even she was a nurse and she deals with death and dying all the time. And it's got some great stories from her as well that I'll tell at later stages. She works in a nursing home where people go to die. Palliative care, they call it.
Right.
And she's very confident and familiar with that. With the process. So, she was being supportive as she could be, but I knew it was my trip. I knew it was my stuff. And, I just continued, I just forged forward. I had now given the, idea that I must use everything in my repertoire to get better. And I was doing that now. But for the next 5 days, I had the most amazing experience. And that was, I only know now because of Abraham Hicks' teaching, I spent 5 days in the vortex. Complete, total, absolute, utter, unequivocal clarity. It was so incredibly scary, powerful, direct, informative, suggestive. And I am really wishing now that I knew then that I was in the vortex. I would have written down every single little thing that I ever picked up.
Yeah, right.
I would have copied it down. At the moment, I was just appreciating that incredible clarity. Okay. So I was very, very, very humbled by the vortex experience. To the absolute core of my being. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm going to go back in time. So when I was 14 years old, I was at school and I had a terrible history teacher. She was the most boring person on the planet.
I think we've all had that same teacher, by the way.
Yes. Walked into the class, open on such and such a page, read it yourself, do the questions at the end. Goodbye. Okay. Really, really a waste of space, to put it mildly. And then something weird happened. And I haven't worked out all the details of it. This guy came in, replaced her till the end of the year, which wasn't that long. And he taught us during that period the French Revolution. Now, he had these tight pants on where you could see his jewels and everything. He was tight kind of dress. He kind of felt very foreign. And looking at the French now, he kind of feels French. Okay.
Okay.
But he taught the French Revolution. And
that's entertaining.
He was amazing. I mean, I learned like King Louis XVI and his beheading and his wife Maria Antoinette and all her shoes and and the kid and, all that kind of story and all, everything that went with it. And it was fascinating. I was absolutely hooked. And after that, because my name's Louis, I jokingly always called myself King Louis.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Apparently beheading didn't actually, deter you in any way.
Well, I'm going to make the story even a little more interesting. So,
okay.
I've always had this thing about the French Revolution after that. I've always jokingly called myself King Louis. This all fits into the other story. And now I married a lady, my wife, who comes from Austria.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you knew Marie Antoinette, she was from Austria. And my wife's name is Annette.
I love it.
Okay. And the Maria comes from her mother.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay. Maria comes from the Queen of Austria. Maria Antoinette's mother had 9 daughters, and she farmed them off to all over Europe to bring peace to the whole of Europe.
Mm.
Okay. And one of them she sent off to France. Her name was Maria Antoinette, to marry Louis, King Louis. And guess what my wife's mother's name is?
I don't think I dare guess. Maybe
Maria.
Maria?
Maria. Now, I always wondered why I had that crick in my neck, but
Yeah.
maybe I was beheaded in one lifetime or other.
Uh-huh.
So what I'm not saying, and this is what I've learned from Abram, because I don't really feel I was King Louis the 16th. I really don't. But it's an interesting coincidence. But what Abram has said to me is that you sometimes tap into lifetimes of other people. Tap into the vibration of them. So that's why you might get 10 King Louis the 16th or 100 or people who claim they might be that or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
And it kind of made sense when Abram put it like that. It's like, that's kind of a bit of the puzzle that has been put in place for me so to understand. So that was quite amazing for me. But what I'm trying to point back to is when I was in the vortex, I was so humbled that I felt absolutely, utterly repulsed about calling myself King Louis.
Wow.
Okay. Even that is not a biggie, it's not a biggie, but it was something that in the face of your higher self, there is complete nakedness is kind of the way I point it out. Okay. You are very, naked. You're just completely yourself. All right. And you don't need to be king anything.
Nothing hidden, in other words.
Nothing hidden. You're completely yourself. So that was an interesting experience for me, that I couldn't even think of myself as King Louis in any shape or form without being disgusted with myself. It was really, really interesting for me. It kind of gave me an idea of how the kind of in awe-ness that I was of the experience. And I must admit, I brought very little out of that because I didn't realize its import. So anybody listening to this who might have a similar kind of experience, I strongly recommend you write down everything.
Okay. Note to self.
Yeah, note to self, absolutely. So I feel that is very, very important. So, now, while I was trying to heal after that faded away, I was getting into better shape. I've been out of work for many, 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 many months. So I was starting to look for jobs. I was going for interviews. Nothing was popping up. Nothing. And I was like getting so, disheartened. And then I had my checkup appointment with my doctor, and I got in my car and I drove to Croydon, the area in London, and I went to Mayday Hospital. I mention that because they say you may die hospital is the way they renamed that hospital.
Oh, gee. Wonderful.
I thought it might be appropriate with my experience.
Oh, gee wilkers. Ugh.
They had to rename it to Croydon University Hospital because it had such a bad name.
I'm sure, yeah.
It's quite funny. So I go in there and I'm sitting, I'm parking my car, and these little tickets they have in the UK. So you go to the machine, you pay your ticket.
Right.
And I was just about to go get a ticket, and a lady says, Hey, do you need a ticket? I said, yeah, I'm just going to get one. She said, yeah, use mine. I've got loads of time on it. So I looked at it and I said, oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. What are the chances, the timing and everything? It's like, thank you. So I put it on my dash, and I didn't really have a close look at it. And I went inside and I sat down and I waited and I waited and I waited. And eventually I got to see a doctor to have a look at my how I was healing and all the rest of it. So he checked me over. And I suddenly realized as I walked in the door, this is the doctor that did my operation. Now, that's very unusual. Okay. And I found out something else which never twigged to me before, is that his name was Dr. Distemple.
Oh, dear.
Okay. And I'm very much about the body and the temple of the body and my experience of, saying, I'm so sorry, body, I'm putting you through this. And the doctor's name is Distemple.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I had missed that piece of the puzzle before. I had no idea. So I was quite blown away, and I was telling him my story. And, I was looking him shrink in his seat and go down. It's like, when am I going to be sued? Look on his face, because of everything I was telling him. It was like, oh. And I said to him, no, it's one of the most amazing and incredible experiences of my life, and I thank you for being part of it. And he was like looking at me even more confused.
Yeah, right.
Like, get this mad guy out of here.
Time for a psychiatric evaluation.
That reminds me of something Ramdas once said. He was a psychologist professor at Harvard, and then he became guru. So he said, after he became more enlightened, he said, who I was back then would have put who I am now in a straitjacket. I love that.
That's a good line.
It is a good line. He's such a good orator. So I finished this thing up, and I leave, and I'm going back to my car, but now I'm worried. I didn't check the time that the lady gave me. I didn't see, have I got a fine or haven't I? It's like, I really don't like getting fines. Not part of my things that I enjoy. Don't think anybody does.
Understandably, yeah.
So I'm kind of walking quite quickly to my car.
We've done
and
that
I
too.
get there, open the door. I see no fine. Yes.
Hooray!
Grab the ticket, pick it up and look at it. And the exact time that's on the clock on my car is on the time on the ticket.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll get your attention every time.
Exactly. So I'm driving home, and I get a call, and it's like, yeah, hi. I said, oh, yeah, that interview you went for? You've got the job.
Wow.
Okay, so. How's that about timing? Abraham is always talking about timing.
That to me is it exemplifies the old cliche, when it rains it pours, but this is in a positive way.
I mean, to me, one of the most amazing experiences of my life, not necessarily a nice one all the time.
No.
But incredible, absolutely incredible. So it was a journey which I really wanted to paint a picture for people of how, your thinking, how timing can work, what a vortex is like, all those kind of things. If you're aware of them beforehand, you can use them to a far greater advantage, because I do feel I missed out, but I now know for the future. So, it's not like I really missed out. I'm now very clearly know what I'll do in a similar situation, and have done in other situations now.
Do you attribute the turnaround, because you experienced a turnaround in the middle of that story that included that rather remarkable dream sequence, or whatever you want to call it? I'm not sure what it was, but
I would use the word vision to be
vision sequence. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how do you replicate it? Like, what did you do? Can you point to anything that you did that kind of helped turn your mindset around, or did you experience it as just happening to you, or what was it?
I suppose there was a strong desire to get well. And when you focused on what you want, the cooperative components come into play. But it's a good question. I hadn't really thought of what triggered the turning point.
Yeah, because it seems to me that's like the key. I mean, it's wonderful when you can get those kinds of internal messaging, in this case, a full vision sequence, which is fantastic. But still, it's nice to know how to trigger them, how to do it deliberately rather than just being a victim of circumstance.
Yeah. I mean, there are many things I've done subsequently to get, I wouldn't say similar experiences, but getting into the vortex in different ways. There are methods, there are ways, and
Oh yeah.
they not necessarily have to be that traumatic. Is is what I'm learning.
Yeah, they're usually pretty mild and almost indistinguishable from the rest of reality as we experience it, which is why we miss them so often, I think. But you're right; they can be very, very simple. They can be just almost mundane. And in fact, one of my favorite questions to ask of Wendy Dillard when she was still doing the show with me is, she would describe a story, not completely unlike yours in that she went through a series of things. Something was traumatic, but it turned into something good, and so on and so forth. And I'd ask her, well, how did it feel? And she would say, normal. And what are you supposed to do with normal? Okay.
I would probably agree with her. I was sitting there struggling to answer you, and it just seemed like Abraham says, when you moving forward, it's the next logical step. It isn't necessarily anything big. Getting that vision and all the rest of it was the next logical step to moving forward, to getting better, and all the steps I took after that were just the next logical steps. And you need to be a vibrational match to achieving them. Otherwise you won't achieve them.
Well, that's the key point, I think, right there.
And that is the key thing is just increasing your vibration to the happier side more and more and more is going to bring you more and more into the vortex, is going to get you more and more what you want. It's the friend I'm hoping to bring in maybe next week, if we can, we'll talk about a quantum leap. Okay. And the kind of drastic effects that could happen and affect you with. Okay. And that's not what I would recommend. And I think if you ask her, I don't think she'll recommend that kind of drastic, kind of experience is what would be desired for most,
Sure. Well, because even something like that feels traumatic. I mean, it's probably a positive trauma if you can, characterize something as being a positive trauma. But nevertheless, anything that shakes us up in a big, big way, it shakes us up. It knocks us off of our balance, and it's like, oh my God, what just happened to me? I can't understand what's going on here. It could be very disorienting.
Yeah.
But that's quite a story. I mean, interesting too how it ties together both a later experience after you had, quote, grown up, unquote, and an experience you had while you were in your teens. The two combined together. I mean, do you have anything that kind of makes sense out of why the two connected?
Because I believe in reincarnation and your higher self exploring different avenues and different experiences in different physical time frames. I'm not really confused about any of it. It kind of all plays together as your higher self is so much more than what we would like to often think of who Louis de Souza is. Okay. It is vastly bigger. I don't really know what words to use,
Right.
It has accumulated so much experience over so much time in so many different ways, come to so many conclusions. And I know that because I'm here, I'm alive, and I'm talking to you, I'm at the leading edge of where I am. And as we all are. We're all on the leading edge, or as I sometimes like calling it, the bleeding edge.
Right.
Of life and an expansion of source. We're all, if we're alive, we're the accumulation of everything that's gone before, on every lifetime, in every way, in every shape, in every form, whatever you believe. But you are here with the highest expansion of the all, which is quite amazing because sometimes we really don't feel that way.
Yeah.
We really don't feel that way.
No, yeah. I remember the first time I heard the phrase, the bleeding edge, it was when I was working in IT. And
yes.
I understood, you have an IT background, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I kind of stole it from the IT background. Yeah.
Well, it's a good term. And I remember the first time I heard it, I was thinking, okay, what does that mean? And I asked my colleague about it, and my colleague explained, it means this. Oh, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. And then I think my first reaction was along the lines of, how is that different from life?
And it isn't.
And it isn't. It's exactly the same thing. It's just applying it to a particular discipline is all. But
Yeah.
But the bleeding edge really describes an awful lot about life. And sometimes we have like a negative connotation about it, but you just told a story where there was a whole lot of bleeding edge going on, and it was pretty miserable for a bit, and yet it turned into something really powerful and impactful and just extremely positive for you. That's a theme that appears over and over again. I mean, you did a podcast with me and Joel Elston one time, and Joel is all about having experiences that are experiences where you're struggling, where you're in a really bad place, and then it becomes a springboard for some amazing growth and amazing future development in your life. And that he sees that as being an ongoing process that happens in the lives of everybody to one degree or another and produces amazing results. So the bleeding edge is actually a good thing in many ways, but it's uncomfortable when we go through it.
You know, it's so simple when you break it down to what Abram says. When you know what you don't want, you have a better idea of what you do want.
This is true.
So if somebody's rude to you, wouldn't it be nice if they were nicer to you? If you're rude to other people, wouldn't it be nice if I was nicer to other people? And it's a simple concept, but it's what happens. And it's playing with contrast. It's so simple.
Yeah, it's one of the... No, that's all right.
You were going to say something.
Oh, I was just... Actually, I think it got knocked out of my head.
It's too simple. You know, when I try and explain this to some people, and I explain it to a lot of people often. Okay, I was talking to 3 students last night. 3 girls about 16 years old, and they were so excited to hear about the law of attraction, so excited to hear about the emotions of their guidance, so excited to hear examples of how it all works, that they're going out today to practice it. You know,
cool.
Tell me how it goes.
Yeah.
Know? And I get that all the time. So many people are excited to hear the fact that your emotions are your guidance, that when you focus on what you don't want, you're going to magnify it. When you focus on what you do want, you're going to magnify it. And it's so simple, and people are desperate for it.
Well, it's not only simple, it's also a little eye-opening, because I remember many times in my life where I wondered what the purpose of emotions was, because so often they just got in the way. And to have Abraham come along and explain that your emotions are your indicator of how in or out of alignment you are with your inner being, that was the first time I actually heard something that made sense to me about why we would have emotions. That was like, oh, well, geez, why didn't somebody explain that to me before? That makes sense.
I know. And then, as you and I both discussed, it's like, why didn't we work it out for ourselves?
Yeah, that too, right?
It's like so logical.
How did we miss that?
And you know, I haven't had nobody in all the years I've been teaching that concept. I've had nobody argue against it. Never, not once.
Well, what would you argue? I mean, how would you say it?
I don't know, but you know, it's so profound, and it's so against a lot of what everybody else teaches, or a lot of the religion teach. You would expect some kind of resistance somewhere, but I haven't had one person yet argue that no, your emotions aren't your guidance, that the priest knows better than I do. You know.
Well, I
just haven't had that.
You just haven't had enough experiences with people who are extreme right-wing evangelists. That's all.
Get them in a room with me for a while. I think I will evangelize them.
I think I'd sell tickets to see that one.
I had some of those Watchtower guys come. I don't know if you got them in America.
Oh yes.
So they come to the door, and I said, guys, I'm so happy that you're here. I would love you to come in. I just have a couple of requests, if I may. They said, okay, what's that? I said, first, you leave your books outside and you don't quote anything.
you just ruined their entire presentation.
Just personal experience. Can we talk about what's happened in your life? Yeah, sure. We came in.
Okay.
Within seconds, they were starting to quote.
Of course.
I said, but what happened to you in your life? How does it work in your life? And it was pulling them back to, did we not agree that you weren't going to quote?
Mm-hmm.
Just talk about what's happened in your life. And it takes all the ammo out of it for them. And, it's like completely gone.
I did have one experience one time. Louise and I lived in Virginia for about 11 years, and we lived for 10 of them in a small town called Warrenton. And Warrenton was a town that I've always been a walker, but especially those few years that we were there, I was doing like 6 miles a day and just loving it. And about half of that walk would be through the center of town. It was a very small town. The whole town, the town's the county seat, and I think the town's population is maybe 25,000 at most. It's not a really big town. Well, I'm walking through town one day, and I'm passing. I always try to remember what the name of this church was, and I can't remember. I think it was an Episcopal church, would be kind of the equivalent of an Anglican church. And I mean, it was just there. It was background. I never paid any attention to it, except this one day I could see that there was this guy standing out front kind of haranguing passersby, right? And so, I'm walking up and I know what's coming. It's not like there's any surprise, right? You know what's coming.
Yeah.
So I'm walking along the sidewalk and he comes rushing up to me and he says, "Have you been saved?" And without even a blink of the eye, I said, "I'm sorry, but I've never been lost." And he didn't know what to do with it. It just ruined his entire. I mean, I never saw a guy deflate so quickly in my life. He had no idea how to reply to that.
Well, you don't know how much that makes me laugh, because I had a similar experience. It just reminds me exactly the same thing.
Really?
I was, white South Africans are generally Christian, or they're waning Christians. Mm-hmm. There's almost nothing in my day. So I was walking on the beach as a student. I was walking with a good friend of mine. He was a Christian. But he was listening to me more than anything. And we got along like house and fire. He's still one of my best friends. And we were walking down there, and he was really trying out Christianity, and he was going to Reborn Christianity, and he was speaking in tongues, and he was having a whole lot of experiences, and I just discussed them and explained how I saw all of them.
Right.
We were having some great conversations, and we were walking down the beachfront in Durban, and the Reborn Christian group was wandering around there, and he was part of that group, my friend, but he didn't know this was going to happen or anything. But one of the guys who'd been canvassing the boardwalks to see if there are any waning Christians out there came to me and he said, "Are you saved?" I said, "No, I'm not." So he said, "Oh." He said, "So do you believe in Jesus Christ?" I said, "No, I don't believe Jesus Christ was my Lord and Savior." "No, you asked me, do you believe Jesus Christ was your Lord and Savior?" I said, "No, I don't believe Jesus Christ was my Lord and Savior. I believe he was an amazing prophet." He said, "Oh, so you don't believe Jesus Christ was your Lord and Savior?" I said, "No." I said no already. So they said to me, "Well, you do know that you're going to go to hell." I said, yeah, I've heard of that place. It's a hot place. I like hot places." And he just looked at me with absolute horror. And the leader came, tapped on his shoulder, and he said, "Leave that guy alone." So funny.
That reminds me of one of my favorite cartoons, The Far Side. I love The Far Side cartoons.
Yeah, you keep on telling me about that one, yeah.
And it's that one cartoon. I mean, that one, it's probably my favorite
one. It really
one.
must have an effect on you.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, the guy sleeping in hell. How much better can you have a metaphor than that? Sleeping in hell and whistling as he's doing his work. I mean, that's like the best thing as far as I'm concerned, because it just deflates all of the fears that are associated and wipes them away. It literally sweeps them under the carpet.
It was obviously your medicine. Mine, what swept death and hell and heaven out of the carpet for me was out-of-body experiences.
Well, apparently, yeah. I mean, if I'd been like sitting in a church and all of a sudden found myself as a Knights Templar, I would probably sit up and pay attention. Yeah.
No, that wasn't an out-of-body experience. That was a vision. There's a slight difference, but
well, close enough as far as I'm concerned. I mean, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
I've got way too much into the semantics of all the differences.
Oh, okay.
It's not really important. I will bow to the fact that they're all the same.
So that is an in-body experience, I guess.
Well, you're consciously awake, so it's kind of, and you're seeing clear visions as opposed to, well, let me give you an idea what my first out of body experience was. I was,
Okay.
Oh dear. Going back to student years, I was living in a communal place where young professionals got together. Well, no, they weren't young professionals. Young students got together to stay in a digs, we called it. So, I had the outside room. The bed was high up, so you had to climb up on a ladder, to sleep there. And, I was very much learning from the religion I started to join, or the spiritual path, starting to learn out-of-body experiences consciously, conscious out-of-body experiences. Now, a good way of doing that is to go from dreams to conscious dreaming, from conscious dreaming to conscious out-of-body experience.
Is that the same as what they call lucid dreaming? Is that the same thing?
I'm not quite sure. I can just say you're aware that you're dreaming when you're dreaming.
That's the lucid dream idea, as I understand it.
All right, maybe that's it. So that's a step forward to getting a full blown conscious out of body experience. So
okay,
I was lying in my bed, and I have this way of flicking myself up onto the bed instead of using the ladder, and flicking myself down. It was quite cool. It's kind of like those gymnastics guys do it on the bar. So I was heading head first down onto the floor, not flicking myself over like I usually do. And I was saying aloud to myself, I hope I'm not in my physical body. And I wasn't, luckily. And I zooped around the corner, and there was my bicycle. And I saw the reflectors of my bicycle, and on the astral plane, I imagine it was astral at that stage. And there's a whole lot of different planes, and there's another stories. They were so bright and so vivid. It was like an incredible bright light shining in my eyes, and I was like shocked. And I was thrown back into my physical body, and I woke up, my heart was pounding, and I was shocked. And that was my first out of body experience.
Wow.
That was the same bedroom where I had the, where I had that, crystal story, which I talked about the other time. Yeah.
That bedroom got a lot of, spiritual activity going on.
It did. There was another story I'll tell you, just because it's exactly the same bed, same place, so you can visualize this. We'll feast you with some of my stories.
Okay.
Today. So I'm trying to link this into the law of attraction. So I'm trying to think, I'd like to ask Abram a question. I'd like to say, Abram, when you have these out-of-body experiences, are you... Is this vortex stuff, or isn't it? I mean, because it definitely felt very, very different to my experience, where I was sick and lying in bed, and I had that vividness, that clarity of mind for those 5 days. It was, it's a completely different experience.
Well, I would imagine that the answer is something along the lines of, did it feel good or did it feel bad to you? Did you feel in alignment or out of alignment?
Well, I mean, when I was heading towards the floor and wondering if my head was about to get crushed.
That wasn't terribly aligned, I guess.
And when I turned around the corner and saw the light from the reflectors of my bicycle, that was my only form of transport at the time, was shocking. So, and then I woke up with my heart pounding. I would say no, but there was a liberation to it. And there was an incredible feeling of being lighter, being vibrationally faster.
So in that sense, it actually was a good experience. It was a good feeling experience.
I'd say it was mixed.
Mixed, okay.
But I had other ones that were, much.
But that's reasonable though, because I mean, it's pretty rare for our experiences to be purely good or purely bad, purely desirable or purely undesirable. It's usually a mix of some kind, I think.
Yeah. But I mean, I've always found a greater viewpoint when I've left my body. It's something that is clearer, especially mentally. For me, if somebody said, what is alignment? What's the most important quality of alignment for me? A lot of people would say happiness. Mm-hmm. Okay, mine would be clarity.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I strongly desire greater clarity on everything.
Okay.
On all subjects and all matters.
Which makes sense, because if you're getting visions and having journeys and so forth, that would require a strong degree of mental/imaginary clarity. I mean, I'm kind of envious when you tell those stories because I've had little minor stories by comparison, but you talk about these things with these strong visual images, and that never occurs to me. So I'm a little jealous of that.
Wow. Catch up, mate.
I'm working on it. I'm trying, but just not there. I mean, this is true for my entire life. I've never been. That's why I was amazed when I found out that people actually do have very clear images when they're imagining or when they're dreaming or anything like that. And I never had that. I felt like,
but
wow.
I'm like you. I don't have that. When I have these experiences, yes. But if I'm just sitting here thinking I'm going to visualize this or that, I'm terrible at it.
Okay.
So. It's something different. It's something different. And when I'm saying catch up, mate, everybody's exactly where they need to be. And if you can just be happy with that.
Well, that's true.
Be really appreciative of where you are. You will find anything can happen on the other side of where you want to go. Anything. But there's a lot to say for Abraham Hicks's, be appreciative of where you are. It is a huge part of the step of moving forward. And,
yeah, I agree.
Walt, every time I listen to you and everything you're doing, I'm so excited for you. You have no idea.
Well, thank you.
And there's nothing wrong with anything that's going wrong with your life. It's just perfect. Wow. And I'm so excited to watch it. It's an honor for me. So, and I want everybody to feel like that, wherever they are, what they experience, what they haven't experienced. It's just like that. But going back to the room and this experience that I wanted to finish off with, because I don't think we've got much time.
A couple minutes, yeah.
Yeah. I was woken up with a huge question in my mind. What would you do if somebody broke into your room? I was like, what the heck? I said, I just want to put out my mind, go back to sleep. And I could not go back to sleep until I had answered the question, what would I do? So I was like, okay. I remembered the story from the spiritual seminar I went to recently from then. It was many, many years ago. It was recent from that perspective. And it was, the guy said this robber came into his house and he shouted with a shout of spirit. He said it's like his spirit was shouting, not him. I was like, I will shout like the shout of spirit. Okay. And that was fine. Whatever it was, said, oh, that's cool. Go to sleep. I turned over, went to sleep. I don't know how long it was, but the light went on in my room. Wow. And I heard some rustling. I leaned over this, because I was right up in the bed.
Right.
This guy was rummaging around my room. He had a stocking over his head. And he found my wallet and he turned around and he was coming back towards me. And I was leaning over my bed. So my head was about wrist to elbow distance away from his head. And I was frozen in absolute horror of this invasion. And I just remembered I must scream. And I screamed with the most kind of gut-wrenching shout. And then, I can understand what the guy was saying, a shout of spirit. And I tell you, that guy went white underneath that stocking. Yeah. He was absolutely mortified at the closeness of this head next to him and this shout. And he hauled it out of there at full gallop. And when I went to go ask all my guys in the communal thing, and said, why didn't you come when I screamed? And they said they were going nowhere when they heard a scream like that. Nobody was going to come to my rescue.
See, that's when you find out who your real friends are, I tell you. Wow, what a story. Absolutely. Well, this has been really interesting, and thank you for sharing these fabulous stories. These are going to be something to think about for some time. I can't hardly wait to find out what your guest next week is going to tell us.
Yeah, I hope I can get around for that one, but I've definitely got one for the week after.
All right. Well, we look forward to it. And we hope that you'll join us next time as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.